Hey, this is Jody Roundhouse with the Roundhouse Report. Today is Sunday, March 22nd, 2020. Please subscribe. This is a quick recap, 2019/2020 thus far review. Very weird stuff. I took a couple notes. I'm going to try to streamline this. Put it there. Okay. For anybody who has watched me before, you know my areas where I specialize in: Asia, China, Iran, Russia, Middle East, anything military related or current events, stuff like that. So I'm just going to hit a couple spots really quick. I don't think I'm going to have time to. The freaking camera's falling down and everything. I got to look for a freaking way to do this. I need to get a tripod. It's time that they pay for me to have a freaking tripod. That's where it's at. Okay, let's see if that works. Okay, China. The South China Sea. I want you, if you could, open up a new tab and Google Map, or just type in South China Sea 9-line or China 9-line and go to Images and look at exactly what China is/has claimed as its own sovereign territory. My freaking thing is still messing up, isn't it? My apologies to the audience. I will speak to the people in charge to try to get this rectified. This is insanity. Good grief. Okay. So the South China Sea, as you can see on the map, the 9-line, China says this is ours. This is our sovereign freaking territory. Now the International Court at The Hague is like, no, BS, no. Everyone's like, no. There's so many overlapping claims to that territory, but forget all that. We're not going to cede the South China Sea. We already have. Thank you, Obama. Island building began in around 2008, was left completely unchecked by Obama, who did not listen to the fleet of the Admiral of the Pacific Fleet at the time. Obama said, nope, we're not going to do that in order to counter it. So it's a fait accompli. Look at it. It's millions of nautical square miles. It's 1/3 of the world's trade passes through it annually. Profoundly strategic for obvious reasons. So there's a saying that can be applied to a lot of different things. Now, right now, the United States, Britain, Vietnam, Philippines, Japan, etc., we're sending like warships and stuff through the South China Sea and through the Strait of Taiwan, just the Taiwan Strait, just to prove we're doing freedom of navigation exercises, the legal parlance. Freedom of navigation. China says this is ours. We're like, no, it's not. We're going to prove it, and we're going to run our ships through it, just to prove that this is indeed international waters, because the United States protects those trade routes and those waterways, and if it wasn't for the United States protecting them, you wouldn't be watching this on a smartphone. Facial. All right. Boycott Apple, by the way. They sold us out to the Chinese in exchange for their markets. Gave them all the artificial intelligence, all that cloud technology that they could ever dream of. Literally, because the Chinese apparently suck at making stuff. The Japanese, the Asians are like the smartest. They're the second smartest race, I believe, or ethnicity, or whatever you want to call it. I'm getting off track. So the South China Sea is theirs. If we want to, if we want to like undo what they've already done, we'd have to go to war, because they're not going to do it willingly. And what they've done thus far is mainly based around the Spratly Islands, but as you can see, it extends 600 to 900 miles south of the shores of China. Every country on a body of water has 12 miles off their coast that is indeed their territory. But after those 12 nautical miles, it's international waters. So China's claiming all that, what you're looking at there on the map, as their territory. If you enter it, it's as if you invaded China. Well, as of now, we're at the stage where we're still probing and screwing with them, and we're sending in warships. We sent a carrier strike group, which is a big deal. But the Chinese are also becoming more and more bold in confronting us. The UK recently sent through a frigate or a destroyer, and the Chinese went out and met it. They almost hit one of our destroyers straight up. You can look at the freaking photograph of it. It's messed up, but it's on lock. And there's a saying that my uncle taught me, and I've elaborated on it, and I don't know where it originates from, but let me see if I can get it straight so I get confused easily. What the first generation tolerates, the next generation accepts. what that generation accepts, the next generation embraces. No, I'm sorry, I have it wrong. What the first generation rejects, the next generally speaking, on that first one, the first generation it rejects, the second generation tolerates. Okay, a good example, think of the gay rights movement. Just as an example, I'm not pushing an agenda, just as a simple example, look at the gay rights movement over the last 20, 30, 40 years and the generational issues. So number 2 here, what that generation tolerates, the next generation accepts. What the generation that accepts, the generation that comes after it embraces. So what this generation accepted, the next generation embraces. And what this generation has embraced, the following generation becomes champions of. And if you look at the transgender movement in the United States, if you're a champion for the transgender movement, you're like freaking, you're good. Everyone's gonna love you. If you speak out in any way in opposition, in any way, just using your own opinion and free speech, you are a bigot, racist. Just it depends. Whatever they want to call you, they'll call. By they, I mean the progressive far left. They'll call you whatever they want to call you. If you're Christian, they'll say you're a radical extremist. If you're white, they'll say you're a bigot. If you're a woman, they'll say something. If you're a man, they'll say something. It's all a bunch of crap. So, but it's going to get to what I'm trying to say is we're at the stage now where we've accepted the South China Sea thing. Like, okay, this is yours. But we haven't quite embraced it for obvious reasons. If we lost access to the South China Sea, that'd be a huge strategic loss for us. We haven't embraced it, but we've accepted the reality for the time being that it's theirs. But I'm curious now. They've militarized these islands that they've built with heavy facilities that they have since hardened, concrete airplane hangars, stuff like that, huge runways. Their shorelines are equipped with anti-ship batteries, anti-air defenses, of course. Okay, but like 20 years ago, it was just like a rock sticking out of the water. So if we drop one of our high-tech bunker busters on top of like the center of one of these islands, can we just break the reef underneath it and like the whole thing go into like a black hole into the ocean? That's what I'm thinking. Because those islands will be the first hit targets in any war with China. So if we drop a big, powerful bunker buster on one of those fake islands, it should just do that, right? But surely, again, the Chinese have taken this into account. All right. The trade war. So number one was the South China Sea. That's always increasing. That's always an issue. Xi Jinping, the dictator, leader for life of China, he has territorial ambitions, and he's achieved that. As of, when did this become like a fait accompli official? 2018, 2019, it got to the point where really, like 20, right when they started. I don't know. I'm getting off track. The trade war initiated by Trump. At first, the Chinese thought he was just keeping a campaign pledge, make people happy. It was just for show. And then all of a sudden it became clear that it was like a blitzkrieg. It's like a shock and awe trade war. Trump comes out, we're going to impose $100 billion worth of tariffs on these products. The Chinese are like, okay, well, we have to respond to save face. We know he's just trying to keep a campaign pledge. So, okay, well, Mr. Trump, if you do $100 billion in tariffs, we're going to do 50 on you. They're already showing weakness. They're not even matching us. And I'm using basic examples here, but the intensity is true. The intensity of the buildup. So first is $100 billion. The next day, Trump's like, I'm enacting $250 billion. He's no longer proposing, he's imposing. He has now enacted $250 billion. He jumped from, he talked, first it was, I'm thinking about imposing $100 billion in sanctions on your economy, on your market. And then by day 2, he has imposed $250 billion worth of Chinese goods. The Chinese are WTF. This is no longer an issue of him keeping a freaking campaign stump promise. This is real. Chinese have never been treated like this by an American president, ever. They were given a lot of advantages in the 90s after the Soviet Union collapsed, economic advantages. They started their own hybrid thing in the early 80s under Deng, like a hybrid capitalistic-esque, communist-esque, free market-esque, so weird hybrid thing. We don't have a name for it yet. We will soon. They've never been, so we gave them like incentives, and then we never took those incentives away. So they've been like getting like they've been ripping us off for a long time, and Trump's brought a lot of attention to that, especially when he was first brought in as president. So the Chinese, they've sent, I believe 11 plus delegations that they sent to us. Now, we've had delegations over there, but it was like sideline meetings at like summits. They've sent these high-level trade delegations to us. We recently, they and us, the United States, we signed phase 1 of a new trade deal, and the Chinese have agreed to spend up to $50 to $100 billion in the coming year, I believe, on farm goods, soybeans, stuff like that. And what do they get in return? Trump may lift some of the tariffs. Who do you think's winning this war? That's all I gotta say on that. Okay, then Hong Kong happens. Hong Kong was given back to China in the 90s by England, by the UK. It had been an English territory until then, and I'm talking like it was either 1994 or 1997. It was after Tiananmen Square. England gave Taiwan back to China, to Beijing officially, and it became a semi-autonomous region of China. They have been allowed limited governing authority in the region, given that it's been thoroughly westernized, which is why the Hong Kong riots happened. They've been so westernized that they saw what was happening and they were like, nope. How long is